Welcome to your order of operations review. Let's get started. Let's start with reviewing GEMDOS, a way for us to easily remember the order of operations. First, we have our grouping symbols. Anything that is in parentheses is solved first. Any operations that are within the brackets will be finished second. All operations within grouping symbols should be done first. Exponents should be solved next. In 5th grade, we do not have to worry about exponents. Next, multiplication or division should be solved. And it's whichever comes first, moving left to right. So if division comes first, you solve that first and then the multiplication. If the multiplication goes first, then you solve the multiplication and then the division. The same thing will go for addition and subtraction. Addition and subtraction is the last operations that we take care of in the order of operations. We'll solve any addition or subtraction that is left. Again, whichever comes first, moving left to right. I also wanted to take the time to remind you all the different ways they can show you multiplication in an expression or equation that you're being asked to simplify. The first is the most traditional way that we have seen multiplication, and the one you're most familiar with is 5 times 15 using the multiplication symbol. Another way is using a dot to represent multiplication. Please do not get this dot confused with a decimal point. They are in different locations. Next, we can have a number outside or side by side another number that's in parentheses. We can have both numbers side by side in parentheses. And we can also have the number outside of the brackets. Multiplication is considered the default operation in algebra due to the many ways that they can represent multiplication within an equation or an expression. There are also 2 ways that they can represent division in an expression or equation. The first is using the division sign, 15 divided by 5, or they can use a fraction bar, which you are familiar with when we talked about improper fractions. And when we talked about improper fractions, I taught you that meant to divide. Okay, so let's begin with a simple expression that needs to be simplified or evaluated. We start with any grouping symbols. As you can see, we have parentheses with 19 plus 12 inside those parentheses, and this will be the first problem that I will be solving. And I always like to do little problems over there just to make sure I don't make any mistakes in my head with my math. Okay. And after we have cleared off our grouping symbols, now we can follow the rest of the order of operations. As you can see, we have to clear out any multiplication or division that's in this expression. That means that 16 divided by 4 must be solved first before we can add. So 16 divided by 4 is 4. I'm going to bring down the rest of my expression, and I'm simplifying it down till I reach my 1 number. After we cleared out the division, we only have one operation left, which is our addition. 31 plus 4 will equal 35. Good job. Okay, our next example also begins with parentheses, and any operation that is within the parentheses should be solved first. So first we'll be solving 12 plus 7. 12 plus 7 is 19. I'm going to bring down the rest of my equation, and I see that I have a 3.4. I know that means multiplication, so I'm going to go ahead and write it with a multiplication sign so it's easier for my mind to see, and bring down the rest of my equation. I'm going to check off my G for grouping symbols and my E because I know I won't have any. My next thing I'm looking for in my expression is any multiplication or division because that must be solved next. And I see that I have 3 times 4 that needs to be solved next. 3 times 4 is 12. I'm going to continue with bringing down the rest of my equation. I am going to check off multiplication or division because I do not see any in the expression. And I have addition or subtraction. Well, remember, addition or subtraction have the same priority. They're in the same fact family. They're BFFs. They share. So I'm going to solve whichever comes first, moving left to right. And 19 minus 12 is first. And 19 minus 12, I'm just going to write it over here. It's going to give me 7. And then I'm going to bring down the rest of my expression. And now I can go ahead and add my 7 plus my 6, which will give me 13. Okay, so don't forget that when you have addition or subtraction left in an expression, like right here, that you're going to solve whichever comes first, moving left to right. Okay? All right. Our next expression that we're going to simplify is one that contains 2 grouping symbols. We have brackets, and then we have parentheses that are representing multiplication. So I'm going to go ahead and begin with my multiplication that I have inside these brackets. The first one I'm going to multiply is 4 and 25 hundredths, times 3. Remember that when you multiply decimals, you ignore the decimal until the end. Then you count your decimal place values and you move them back into your number. So 3 times 4 and 25 hundredths is going to give me 12 and 75 hundredths. I'm going to go ahead and bring down my brackets, and I'm not going to forget my 50 with my minus sign that I have not solved yet. I'm going to add my plus sign, and I'm going to go ahead and multiply to get rid of this set of parentheses. It's going to be 5 times 4, and that's going to give me 20. Actually, these sets of parentheses aren't really grouping anything that are in this problem. They're acting as a way to represent multiplication. Once I've done the multiplication within those brackets, you can see that I still have operations to do within the brackets. So my next step here is going to be to add 12 and 75 hundredths plus 20. So I'm going to do that over here, out of the way. Notice that when I'm adding my decimal to my whole number, that I'm lining up those whole numbers, adding a decimal with my zeros, so everything's lined up in the right place value. That gives me 32.75, and at this point I can go ahead and drop the brackets, and that will leave me with one operation to do, and it will be to subtract 50 from 32.75. So I'm going to line up my whole numbers first, and then add decimals and zeros where needed to line up my place values. Now I can go ahead and subtract. Sorry, I got stuck on that one. It's late. All right, and I got 17 and 25 hundredths for my 50 minus 32 and 75 hundredths. All right, and we are done. Have a good day, afternoon, evening, at whatever time of day you're watching this. See y'all soon.